Benny, what's up, man? Thanks so much for being on the Artistprenuer Fanded podcast. How you doing today?
I'm good, brother. Thanks for having me here.
If you guys don't know, Benny is founder of Next Shark and an entrepreneur and a mentor to me. He's an advisor to me, and he's been a good friend for a long time. A fellow Aquarius. I hope that's okay to
Hell
say.
yeah. Hell yeah. There we go. There we
um,
go.
Benny was one of the first people I called when I embarked on this journey of Fanded, and he's just been so integral to where we're going, and also where we started, and also where we're going. So honored to have you on the show. Honored to have you here. But would love to just start off the bat, man. Like, would love to know. Would love for everyone to hear your story, like where you were born, where you grew up, and the third question is, I guess, when the bug bit you for entrepreneurship and business.
Yeah, great question. And by the way, it's an honor to be here, bro. I mean, I know that we've been friends for quite some time, but just following your work and just being a fan first, and now like, friendship, man, like that's, those are the things that make life worth living. So
That's so
thanks for having
true.
me on.
Yeah,
Appreciate
our
you.
pleasure. My pleasure.
So yeah, I mean, my story. Wow. I was born and raised in San Francisco to Chinese immigrant parents. My mother was who they would call a freedom swimmer. So during the aftermath of the Cultural Revolution, during that time, she was trying to, escape to have a better life for the family and everything. And so she actually swam from mainland China to Hong Kong as a refugee. And the crazy thing about that is the first two times she actually failed and got caught, had to go to prison for a little bit. And but even then, after all she went through, she still decided to go. And on the third try, she finally made it. So my family, when they
Wow.
came here, they had the typical immigrant story. Coming here with like $3 in their pockets and just working the way up. I still remember. I think there's still like home videos of me like back when I was just kind of born, and it'll be like in a room, and then around me would be like just like beds on the ground and sleeping bags and everything, just with all the relatives together, because at the time like we were still kind of in poverty during that time. From there, my folks, my family, they worked their way up, starting off as dishwashers and cooks at restaurants and stuff, while trying to learn English and assimilate to American culture. On top of that, they managed to make a living for themselves, and kind of carve out their own American dream. For me personally, I mean, when I was born, my family had the whole, typical Asian American conservative upbringing, which was like, a hope that this kid could be a doctor or a lawyer someday and bring honor to the family and what have you. And that they had all these freaking high hopes for me, right? And I would say, when I entered like kindergarten, I think that they kind of realized that they had to tone down their standards a little bit more, a little, you know. Um, I was not a good student. I mean, I think I literally broke every single smart Asian stereotype that was out there. I mean, I was one of those kids that didn't know what timeout was. Like, what kind of Asian parents just use timeout as punishment? You just stand in a corner, nothing. You know what I mean? It's kind of
Right.
so I didn't know timeout was punishment. Teachers would catch me like during during timeout you kind of sit and face the wall, right? I freaking take a crayon and draw on the walls and stuff like that. I mean, during like spelling tests and everything, when all the students were trying to listen to the teacher, you know how spelling tests work. Teacher says the word and you kind of spell it. Man, I'd be just drawing on my test sheet. I was not listening to my my teacher at all, man. I was just oblivious the entire time. And I remember every single year up until high school, I was like in special ed programs, and teachers would say that I was always like barely hanging on, in a sense where there was always a huge possibility that I would get held back a grade, but somehow like I always like just barely made it. So I guess to answer your second question, I mean, entrepreneurship just came very sort of it was very organic, to be honest. I mean, and it wasn't something that I aspired for. It was more of like, I didn't know what I was good at, and at that time. You know, when I got into college and everything, I knew that I couldn't like, be ahead of my peers through more education and getting good grades. And so I thought, why don't I just like start working and just get as much work experience as I can? Because if I can't win through grades, I can at least win through experience, right? And so my freshman year of college, I mean, I was already working, God, like at one point I was working like four jobs at the same time. I
What?
could still,
What were you
Yeah, like my
doing?
fresh dude, I could count them on my hands still, man. My first one, I was a Dell computer campus rep. So basically, my job was to help sell Dell computers on campus, host events for students, and then I also worked at the UCI computer store as a stock person, and then
Wow.
I also drove this big. I went to UC Irvine, so I drove this big anteater truck all over campus to deliver campus faculty members and everything. And I remember at that time clearly because like I had literally just gotten my license. So like, and so I always joke that, I got my experience driving, just driving this big anteater truck all over campus. Um, and then my third job was I was a campus note taker for people that had like disabilities or they were for whatever reason they weren't able to kind of take notes in class, and so
Wow.
I got paid. So for me it's like, oh, I could get paid to go to class and take good notes, and this is like a win-win for everybody, right? um, and then my fourth job actually was I was an intern for Andrew Yang.
No way.
So like, yeah, this is back when he was CEO of his startup called the Manhattan GMAT. It was like a GMAT prep course, and so
Mm,
I always have this funny story where I bombed like my interview with them, like I just wasn't prepared for the interview, and
no
he
way.
lectured me for like 20 minutes of how I can be a better interview, like as a job
Interviewee.
applicant, how can I do better interviewee, yeah, exactly. um and I thought that I wouldn't hear back from this guy, after bombing the interview, but he ended up hiring me a week later, and I worked with them actually for I think close to 2 years. So it's crazy how, you know, things shift and everything. But to make a long story short, I mean, I think that I started my own company just because I didn't know what else I was good at. For one, I wasn't the best student. Secondly, I wasn't good following a schedule. Like the nine to five schedule just wasn't it for me. I was such a night owl, and I was not a morning person. And I just needed. Honestly, I think my road to entrepreneurship and wanting to be my own boss, or whatever you want to call it, was really just wanting to kind of be able to set my own schedule and to really focus on the things that I was good at. And so I wasn't, it never had this like thought set out where I was like, oh yeah, I want financial freedom, or I want this or whatever. It
Mm,
was really just like, I want to succeed in some way. And it just so happened that I just became a founder at the end of the
wow.
day. Yeah.
Man, I love that story so much because, I mean, just the fact that you were so down to like do all these jobs. I think that it's easy for us to kind of get in our own way, right? We think about like a lot of times in my life, when I was most miserable was when I was operating out of my ego, and a lot of times it's like our ego will tell us, well, don't take that job or don't do that because you're doing something bigger and better. But I've been thinking about this concept a lot that I read in this book about like the event versus the process. And everything on social media we see is like the event, but the process road leading up to that event is the thing that like we just want the event now. And it's so cool to kind of peel back the onion and see, you were so willing to take these jobs that, I'm sure others probably might have looked down on or like were like, oh, I'm not doing that. Um, do you feel like, I mean, just to back up a little bit, I mean, you said that your mom, when she had gone to prison a couple times or gone to jail a couple times trying to escape, do you feel like you were influenced in that sense from like your mom's story from this like energy, the spirit of like I I I I deserve, but my family deserves better, like because so much of the time like those are kind of the seedlings, right, that end up kind of being our story. But I would just love to hear if your upbringing, especially like the tenacity of your mom coming here for a better life, if that kind of has poured into the foundation and the fabric of you.
Yeah, I think that it's undeniable, at the end of the day, if you think about it, because growing up, and I think that this is so for a lot of like, immigrant parents, regardless of where they came from, especially if they came here seeking for a better life, seeking asylum or whatever it is. I mean, there's tons of immigrant stories like that, right? Um, you know, I always saw my parents hustling, ever since I was, from the moment I can remember, they were always hustling. They were barely at home, but they were not home because like they were working all the time. Like they tried, even though they had like full-time jobs, like I mean, like they're I feel like immigrant parents are like the ones that pioneered the side hustle, And to give you a real life example, right?
Facts.
Like, my parent. Right? Like my parents had like, they worked their full-time jobs and everything, right? But then on the weekends, right? It's a true story. On the weekends, I would go with them to local fairs to sell ice cream. to make extra cash. Sometimes it would be ice cream, sometimes it would be like, making like corn on a cob or whatever it is. I still remember like being in elementary school, like screaming out to people walking by during the fairs going, "Hey, ice cream, like, a dollar,
Wow.
$2." You know what I mean? And so, and or other times like, we would, let's say, go to conventions and whatever, and my parents would have some new scheme that they were trying to sell on the side, or they might have, at one point my family owned a Chinese restaurant too on the side,
Wow.
in San Francisco as well, and they were still working their jobs, just, too, and um, and I think that seeing that, and on top of that, seeing the relentlessness of it, because,
Mm.
um, you know, the way businesses are, like in the startup world, right? They always say like, if you do a startup of some sort, you have between a 75% chance to a 95% chance of failure, right?
Mm.
And and seeing that, right? Seeing all these different things that my parents were doing, seeing them fail time and time again, but seeing that relentlessness of, it's like, you know what, like maybe I'll fail today, but I'll just keep it going. Like they never really gave up, and I think that, that sort of mindset really was embedded in me, because even now it's like I don't, I just, don't, I have a very good stamina, let's put it this way. Like in the context of, let's say, Next Shark, right? I mean, I've been running this like for over 9 years now. So just
Wow.
last month was our 9 month anniversary, right? And
Yo,
so
congratulations,
9 year
man. That must have
anniversary.
been surreal.
Yeah, so now we're on our 10-year anniversary, and we're still like a, as you might know, we're a bootstrap startup. We don't run on outside funding or anything like that. And for a lot of people to run a bootstrap startup, like, at that sort of scale for such a long time, some of it's kind of unheard of in a sense, right? Usually it's kind of
Right.
like, okay, what are the next steps to, everything is all about scaling fast in this time, and so, um, I definitely see myself a lot. I think I definitely, there's a lot of traits that I inherited, from my
Mm.
parents, and I think and for me, like to this day, I'm grateful for it. I think that I don't think that I would, have gotten to where I am with the resources that I started out with, and with where I came from. I mean, it's funny, like seeing being here now and then looking back like 10 years ago, 12 years ago to where I came from. I'm like, man, this isn't this I never thought that this would be possible, so it's all gratitude here, you know.
Man, that's really amazing. But I didn't. I mean, I've known you for about a decade now, and I didn't even know, the intricacies of that. I mean, but it shows, right? I mean, I think it resonates so much too because, like, that relentlessness that you talked about for immigrant parents, right? Just coming here to seek out an opportunity, and then seeing that, right? Like, I mean, it's right. It's like psychology 101, right? Like, us children, we model the behavior of our parents, and like it seems to me, and I'm not trying to, say this, but it seems to me that like your ability to be comfortable with the uncomfortable, seems like there's a direct correlation from, on weekends, ice cream, really helping sell, being a part of these different types of things that your parents were doing. Because, I mean, growing up, my parents, same thing. Like my mom was from the Philippines. My dad is from Iowa, but he's half Filipino. But she would like, yeah, I would go like at the night during the nighttime, and she'd be cleaning offices like banks and things. And then on the weekends, she'd be selling flowers, but she also had her full time job. And it was just, you're so right. The side hustle thing wasn't necessarily a side hustle. It was more like, well, we need to make rent, or we need to pay the mortgage, or we need to, it's like a mandatory side hustle. So, man, that's really amazing. And it's amazing to see kind of that direct correlation for like how you're able to really stay tenacious with all of this. And because that's the thing too, right? I mean, it's an uncomfortable position to be a founder at times because you have to, it almost feels like you have to blindly have faith in something that like nobody else can see but you. Would you resonate with that?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that there's a variety of different founders and everything, right? I think that, there are founders that maybe start off with a lot of resources, that we have. Yeah, that, a lot more resources, I mean, I don't judge, those types of founders that are able to easily, raise a ton of money, or they have like great connections and everything, and, they're able to kind of scale like, super quick, right? I have a lot of deep respect for, a lot of the founders that really kind of start from zero, because it's tough, it's tough not to have something to, fall back on, and I mean, there were times, I mean, even like during the early years of Nick Shark, where, even me, there was times when I personally had trouble making rent. I remember, at some points we were down to our last 2 months of rent, and, we kept going, and, I remember thinking about maybe I should look for a job just in case something, really kind of, maybe it doesn't work out or something, right? But luckily, I mean, on our final month, I mean, of rent and everything, like somehow Nick Shark, was able to take off, and, we were able to kind of sustain, as we went along, right? But, for me, kind of back to the whole tenaciousness and everything. I mean, I'm a firm believer in that, you're not better than any job, even to this day. I mean, I've been an entrepreneur for like, 10 years now, right? And you can argue and say, yeah, maybe I have like some level of success, right? I run a large media company. I also have like, other businesses that I run. I have like a fish market and everything. I do some. I'm involved in the restaurant space and everything. And even for there, there's been times where, I don't think I'm better than doing dishes. I've washed dishes before, and it's crazy. I remember, I'm at my fish market, and then it's me and the big boss, right? And we're both like, like it's end of the day, we're both just like washing dishes and, cleaning things up, wiping table. And I'm like, dude, we're like, it's so funny. We're like two like really experienced founders, and we're just like, doing work like this. And for us, in a sense, it's therapeutic, and stuff like that humbles you, And I think that, especially whatever company that you work in or whatever business that you do, I think that, you need to know and experience every side of the business. And it may not be like, it doesn't have to be like your forte per se, but you got to know about it, And the reason being is that, when you do hire the people around you, you have a deeper understanding of the job that they do, and
Mm.
because you've done it yourself, you've experienced it yourself, and and that's me during the early years of Next Shark. I didn't know how to code. Code helped code the first site. I didn't know anything about analytics. I didn't know anything
Wow.
about like, writing, journalism, stuff like that. A lot of it was really just being relentless, and, a lot of sleepless nights, a lot of, like a lot of struggle, I guess. But, at the end of the day, I mean, if you're able to get through that hump, I mean, you come out such a stronger and more knowledgeable person.
Man, it's amazing because like the parallels. I mean, they say. I mean, the saying that I've been hearing a lot lately is that um, being a CEO, being a founder, co-founder is hard because because it's lonely. And weirdly, right? Ironically, it kind of is meant to be lonely because it's almost like you're trying to manifest this vision that you have in here and in here, and trying to get them to come together and find the people around, find the team, the most talented people that believe in this vision. It's like timing and alignment is so important. And as a founder myself, and as with my music too, being an artist, it can feel so lonely at times because it's almost like nobody gets you. Nobody. It can feel like nobody can understand you. I would love it if we could segue into how what's the story of new media rock stars when we met into into Next Shark, and I guess like would love to hear kind of your mentality through all that. What kept you kind of on the path believing in this quote unquote impossible dream?
Oh man, it's I've decided a long, long time ago, like even before, I started New Media Rockstars. My first company, was a media company, as you know, focused on covering, the rise of YouTube stars and internet celebrities and online streaming and what have you. Even I've decided even way before that, I'm gonna do everything I can to, you know, to manifest, whatever that I want out of life, no matter how hard that is, and to make it. And I don't suggest people take the same mindset as I do because it's a little bit extreme. But for me, it's kind of like, I either do it or I die trying. One of those. You know. Um, Now, I think that even now, like now that I'm a new father, I have a family and everything. Of course, like as you get older, you become like more like risk adverse and everything because you got family to work with and everything. But even then, it's like, there's so many moments where it's like, and even nowadays, there's so many moments of like burnout, and it's like, man, like is this worth it? Like, when am I? But then, there's this inner voice in your head. I mean, like Robert Greene, he kind of talks about this, famous best-selling author. He talks about this in his book Mastery and everything, right? There's always that inner voice in your head that just like that tells you the path that you can kind of that you should be on because, and you have to kind of train yourself to really like trust that inner voice, right? And And for me, like, yeah, that inner voice is always kind of strong. Like, as difficult as the days can be, and as difficult that the days keep going, like I always get back to that point where it's like, I made that oath where it's like I'm gonna do everything I can. Of course I'm gonna take care of my family. Of course I'm gonna make sure that everything around me, the people I love, are gonna be good. But I'm gonna do everything I possibly can to make this work. And in a sense, like when we're talking about doing the impossible, right? I mean, even the industry that I'm in, it's tough. It's a tough industry. We're not even talking about startups. It's tough being in startups. Now it's already super super tough being in media. I mean, I can't really think of that many media companies that are sustainable and doing well and everything. I mean, this is all media too. I mean, there's arguments of, not even journalism, but what about music and what about like, movies and everything. There's so many different questions about sustainability and stuff like that right now, right? And then and to add another layer to that, like we're niche. We're targeting, Asian Americans and everything, which is technically, a little bit of a smaller market, a really fast growing market, right? Um, and with new media rock stars and transitioning till now and everything, I mean, I learned so much. There's so many different challenges. I mean, without getting too personal and everything, I mean, I made so many mistakes, whether it was, partnering up with the wrong people or making bad business deals or, being experienced and just being just making bad decisions just because I was so green and everything, right? There's so many challenges, and there's still so many challenges. And what I've realized is that you can be an entrepreneur for like X amount of years, like whether it's a year, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, whatever it is. I look at it as like there's always this path where it's like, you know, things are great, but then, it's like a game that just keeps leveling up. You're just leveling up. That's about it. I mean, there's tough times and everything, but as you become successful and as you put yourself out there more, it's gonna get harder. And it's the same thing as you're playing like a video game of some sort, it's like you're leveling up in life, like, either we and if you aspire to go up on top and as high as you can and everything, um you got to know what it takes. You got to know the amount of relentlessness it takes. And I don't want to treat this as a knock on people that are not trying to reach the top per se.
No, no, no.
That's not the question. It's just a matter of like, I think the point I'm trying to make is everybody has a destination they want to go regardless of what that destination looks like. And
Right.
from point A to point B, like it's life is about self-discovery. It's about growth. It's about like how can you grow in your own way and feel fulfilled like kind of in your own way, right? Everybody's destination is different. Everybody's barometer is different, right? So all I'm trying to say is that to get from point A to point B, there's going to be challenges, but in those challenges and as you're able to break through those barriers and everything, it's gonna feel so good. Like, once as you reach that top of whatever you want to interpret, what that top looks like, and
Man,
you're gonna be a better person.
that's
Yeah.
so well said, bro. Because Naval Ravikant said that like life is a single player game. He's like, if you think about it, right? In a sad way, I think the memory of us only lasts a few generations, right? Like we just, even, I mean, ourselves, we don't last very long, right? But the memory of us doesn't last very long either, only a few generations. And he says, but life is a single player game. And if we can see it like that, that maybe can take, some of the anxiety away from having to be something we're not, because we can be who we want to be. Man, I love that oath that you talked about. You said that it's almost like a pact that you've made with yourself that I'm going to do every single thing that I can to make this happen. Was there a catalyst for that? Like, was that something that you had just kind of formed personally yourself over time, or was it is it like a duty that you got like from a value from your family, or I would love to kind of hear what kind of was the catalyst for that.
Yeah, I think that I always felt that I've just lived life, growing up, just having something to prove. I mean, growing up, I was that I wasn't, family life was really rough at home, and so I was kind of a weird kid, growing up. Didn't really know my identity that much, and it was hard. I didn't know what I was good at. I wasn't good at sports. I wasn't good at school, and making friends was really really tough. And I don't know what it was. I think that I always just somehow like pulled through. But also, I remember there was a moment, like maybe, some really dark times. Like, I think I forgot it was during college or after college, whatever it is. And, I remember, and I think a lot, I get into my thoughts a lot, and I kind of looked into this thing and I kind of came to this conclusion where it was like, look, either you can just like, give up or you can get back up and keep going, you know? At the end of the day, you only have one life, you know? And, it's you only get one life, right?
Mm,
And I think that you either do your best to make the best of it. You either look at the challenges as like this this way that could better yourself, or you can look at it where it's like, oh crap, like I don't want to deal with this, you know?
right.
And I think that maybe, yeah, maybe it came from the parents, I think that there was one thing definitely that, my family, my immediate family looked into was like they just wanted something better for themselves, just wanted something better, a better situation. And I think that that thought is ingrained with me too, where it's like, I'm not satisfied with this. I want to do better, and I want to do better by any means necessary. This cannot just be the pinnacle of, what I can do. As long as I am living and breathing and I have the energy, you know, I'm gonna do it. What's like, what's the worst that could happen? You know what I mean?
Mm.
I mean, me just like rolling over and just giving up, it's just I'm just wasting time at that point. I'm just wasting life, you know?
It sounds to me like you never gave up hope.
I think so. Yeah, I think hope. Yeah, I think you got to hang on to hope. And don't get me wrong, and in this path of trying to make it into to for success, regardless of how you view that success, it's tough. It's very, very, very tough. I mean, there's a reason why. I mean, if it was easy, then everybody would be successful. Everybody would be, disrupting and doing all these like, doing all these things, right? But the reality is, it takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of sacrifice, and sadly, it actually takes luck too. Does and luck definitely has a big play into it. However, my argument to that is, you know, life is also almost like it's almost like a, how do you say it? It's like a almost like a never-ending casino, but in a sense, like you don't really you have nothing to lose. I mean, even if you don't have you have $0, you still have two hands. You still have like, you're still living. There's something that you can do. Every day is a new day. Every day you're dealt with a new set of cards, right? And it's really, your choice of how you want to, play that, right?
Man,
So,
yeah, it reminds me of like the. I mean, I've said it before, but like Einstein said it. He said compounding interest is, the seventh world wonder, because, right? I mean, from a financial perspective, right? It just exponentially compounds, but learning is like that, and it seems so much to me that like, really, you were just tenacious with, if I'm doing something, I'm learning, and I can keep leveling up, and that learning is what then propels me to success. And the other point too, I think is interesting to talk about is that, I love that you said success is whatever you define it. Because I mean, I used to think that success is like once you reach a certain moment of success, then it's forever. But it's actually always fleeting. And you could have a great year as a company. You could hit revenue positive. You could hit all your milestones, your KPIs, and all these jargon. But the reason I've learned personally why companies go quarter by quarter is because you can't forecast the whole year of success as a company, because you are leveraging a lot. There's a saying I heard too, like if you don't feel like the decisions you're making today or the decisions of your team, your company are making could potentially break your company, then you're not dreaming big enough. And it's just it's like when we're young, we think that, oh, if I just get this Grammy, right, or if I just get this Oscar, or if I get this thing, if I get 100 million streams, and then that's it. But yeah, the wake up call for me was that it you have to always keep fighting for that. Like businesses are not just a static thing that you can then just hit this thing and everything's all good. No, it's a constant, not struggle, but you have to keep the lights on. You have to keep going. Um,
it's interesting you say that too, because we talk about Grammys, we talk about achievements and everything like that. And the reality with all this is a lot of it is really just, I mean, honestly, no disrespect to like Oscars, Grammys, and all the awards and everything that's out there. A lot of it's just validation. That's it. You're getting validated by your peers. That's really all it is. And art is subjective. All these different things are subjective. You know what I mean? And I think that, at the end of the day, like, the most important person is you, right? And are you growing, are you doing certain things, because like even if like of course you need to be selfless, you need to help those around you, but if you're not good, nothing around you is good either, And we've all been there. A lot of us are still, and it's very, very tough not to be in that mindset. I'm not gonna come out here and be like, oh yeah, I'm so much better than everyone else. I don't care about these awards. I don't care about whatever. No, it's in your life.
Right.
It's like, it's and it's that challenge to yeah, like, validation. Yeah, it feels good, is important and stuff. But what's most important is that, are you doing the things that you want? Are you doing the things that you think that you're proud of? And do you feel that you are sending the message? And are you sending that message of, the problems that you're really, trying to solve, or whatever that could be, right? Um, I mean, it's a journey, man. It's a
Yeah.
journey, dude.
Yeah.
And I think that ultimately, you know, for me, what's crazy was that, give you a real life example, right?
Mm.
I mean, amongst entrepreneurs for a long time, it was like, oh, what's that achievement that you want to get? You want to get in the Forbes 30 under 30 list, or whatever it is, right? And I remember I first saw it in 2012 when I think it was around 2012, fact check me on this, but like when they first launched it, you see all these successful entrepreneurs that are under 30. I think Mark Zuckerberg was in it or whatever, like
Yeah.
multi-billionaire or whatever. I'm like, wow, it would be so cool to be on that list someday. And I remember for like, 3 years or something, I was like, oh yeah, I'd be trying to get on it, asking people to nominate me, or do certain things and stuff, and always disappointed, never got it. And then literally, on my last year, I mean, I didn't even, I don't. I was just like, you know what, this is my last year. Like, let's just focus on me. Like, why am I like spending all this time like trying to, you know, to think to chase after something? What's most important? Most important is build a damn good product, build a damn good brand, whatever that is. That should be the focus. Otherwise, like, what's the point? Like, why am I wasting time for this, right? And funny enough, like, I remember it's like on my last year, I got this random email from people from Forbes, and they're like, hey, like, you came really highly recommended this year. We're interested. And they asked me all these questions and stuff, and then I got on the list. My last year, and
Wow.
it was literally the last year that I didn't even try. I was just just doing my thing, and it was so. I think that just goes to show where it's like,
Right.
just worry about your shit, man.
Yeah.
Like, don't, like, worry about your own shit,
Yeah.
and yeah,
It's
people will
like
recognize you.
yeah, because it's funny. I mean, I resonate, man. Like, because when I got to 100 million streams on Spotify, I always dreamed of that day as like something like released an album, and then it was this like storybook thing. But really, it was just me doing the same thing I do, which was just relying on my system, which is putting out a cover, do the video, and put it on Spotify and YouTube, and then just do the next one, then do the next one. That whole that thing we talked about earlier about like the event versus the process. I mean, we live in the day and age of social media, and we can see so many things, and unfortunately, I think that's why. In my in my area with artists, why we can get so down on ourselves, because we're focusing on the outcome of somebody else's process, when really we need to be focusing more on our own process to create more, right, and to do more of what we can do, and who we are. If I can ask you two questions, I guess, what are some parallels that you see? I mean, because you do cover entertainment, there's so much that you guys cover, but you do know a lot of artists, and we do know a lot of creators and actors and directors, all that. What are some of the parallels that you've seen by being an entrepreneur, being a founder, and being CEO, and also with the journey of what it is being an artist and a creative, and being kind of an independent entrepreneur in their own right?
Yeah, I mean, I think the major parallel is kind of like, we always talk about that big break, right? That big break where it's like that one song that goes viral, or it goes on the Billboard Top 100 or something, right? Landing that big role of some sort, or getting that like, finally landing that like, commercial gig as a model or whatever it is, right? I mean, well, we always talk about that, and as founders, I think that it's that same thing. It's like these sort of like stepping stones of some sort, right? Oh, are we, that is okay. That's destination. Raised like $10 million in funding. Got it. Raised our Series B. Now, like, we're exiting. Now we're IPO. That's our big break. That's when that moment happens. And I think that, I think that the parallels are very clearly there, in a sense where we're always, thinking, or we're hoping, and we're working towards that, supposed, you know, big break, right? And I think that it's easy to really kind of, lose sight of, kind of what's most important, right? And in the end of the day, it's really, you know, you, right? Like, whether, what do you want to be? Like, is
Yeah.
it, and let's just say as an artist, right? Let's say as a music artist per se, right? Such a challenging industry, especially with new platforms that are out there, content being more democratized. Like anybody, equipment is a lot cheaper now too. And
Right.
anybody technically could be an artist nowadays. Like the barrier to entry is a lot lower, so competition's higher, right?
Hmm.
And on top of that, the it's much harder now to even monetize,
Right.
on that content, on that music too. You know what I mean? I think I keep reading articles on like, artists and streaming and stuff like that, and how little money they get and
Mm.
what have you. And I mean, and I think you and I kind of talked about this too. And I don't know if this is true, but I would assume that like, maybe 10 years ago, let's say 1 million streams would be a big deal, but
Right.
nowadays, like, even 10 million might not be, you might not even move the needle with that, right? Whereas like
Yeah.
it's like, 20 years ago, if you're like, hey, 10 million people listen to your music, that's a big freaking deal. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And that's
You
the
know?
interesting place
Yeah.
that we're at, right? Where reach doesn't equal revenue, right? But it's wild to think that, oh my gosh, millions of people have heard my music. And I think this is a good segue into the next question. But like millions of people have heard my music, but why is it that if I've been able to, or if the thing that I created that I own was able to impact that many people, then why is it that I'm still not able to pay off my college loans, or why am I not able to live the life that I dreamed of having affected this many people? I guess my next question to you is like, what you were one of the first people I talked about Fandid. What is it about Fandid that makes you believe that this is the future of the music industry, the entertainment industry?
Yeah, I think this is how I see it, right? I mean, um, I think that as like, and it's like this ecosystem, right? Like there's this ecosystem of like artists and different things, right? And this is not just relevant to the music world too. It's relevant to various places, right? And I think that we can all agree that there's a lot of broken systems that are out there right now, right? And now specifically narrowing down to the music industry, a lot of different broken systems, right? I mean, it's harder for new artists to break out. And even if they do break out and go viral, that doesn't necessarily mean like they're going to be the next big thing. You know what I mean? And I think that it's just so much harder now, and I think that one of the things, and our plug with Fandid, why I got involved with Fandid too, is that I think that it offers such a great option that to really help artists on certain things that they're not necessarily good at or don't want to do. Perfect example, like for me, right? As I keep running the company and as I become an entrepreneur, I was very used to doing everything, accounting, marketing, and everything at once,
Mm,
right? Now that as I keep growing and everything, I'm starting to think about, well, you know, if I'm so much worried about all these little things, like, what I'm good at suffers. You know what I mean? And as an artist, if you're a music artist, right? If you can be the best vocalist, musician, or whatever, but if your mind is into has to be dived into you know production, and then being a marketer, being a coder,
mm,
being a data scientist, a growth hacker, all in one, it's tough. Like your mind does not have that space for it. As amazing and powerful as the human mind is, there's always a capacity of some sort. And we're not
yes.
even talking about the physical capacity, your mental capacity too, on top of
Yes.
that, and ultimately, like, everybody suffers in a sense, and for me, like, I hope that Fandid can be that answer for a lot of these music artists that are out there. A lot, no, actually, not only just music, but just artists that are out there that has just been like, man, I'm working so hard just to get the stuff out, but I can't get it into the right eyeballs, or I'm competing against like so many different like places, and it's tough. Or let's say I'm a successful artist, right? But it's getting so hard to handle, like
Right.
I got like, I need to figure out like, the business side of things. Oh, am I taking care of my fans and communicating with them,
Right.
properly, right? How do I work out these collaborations and everything, right? I mean, um, back then, you had, let's say, the big boys like the studios and everything that would kind of handle that for you. But how many people out there could get a big contract with a major record label? The gatekeepers that are out there. And frankly, it's like, yeah, sure, like the people that are up there, maybe they know a thing or two about music or whatever it is, but I wouldn't say that they're the end all be all with things. Things are constantly disrupting. People, these big guys only know what they know based on what has been successful in the past, right? They don't, but as far as everything's concerned, and I'm very excited for the next generation of artists, yeah, it's tough. Don't get me wrong. It's freaking tough, but what I think what I am hopeful for is that you're going to see more and more people stepping up, thinking about different ways to disrupt. And we're going to see, like, I hope that we're going to see a huge renaissance in music. And I hope that, artists and, I guess like artistpreneurs, like you,
Yo,
Travis,
yeah.
I mean, the reason why I respect you, and this is like, not even, I'm not trying to, like, blow smoke up your ass or anything, but like,
Yeah.
what I respected about Fandid and everything is that you were an artist, right? And you were an artist for decades and decades now, right? You've kind of like
Hmm.
you've been around the whole YouTube phase. You toured as a band. You've reached like millions upon millions upon millions upon hits on YouTube. You've had like great collaborations with some of the biggest artists that are out there. You work with some of the biggest brands that are out there, and yet you still see a lot of these glaring problems that are out there,
Hmm.
whether it's happening to you or your peers. And you were like, you know what? I want to take it upon myself to help solve this problem. Because I don't want the next generation of artists to go through the same things that I do, and I want and most of all, and the most important thing is, you want to discover the next person that's gonna change the whole freaking game.
Mm.
And I think that helping create an ecosystem where artists can thrive and continue to really disrupt, I think that that's such a beautiful goal to have. You know what I mean? And I hope that not just you. I hope that there's going to be more artists and more creatives that think about, okay, cool. Maybe there might be something that I could create that helps the ecosystem too. At the end of the day, it's community. We all work together. We all
Right.
work together to better ourselves. Because the thing is, like, it's not the people with money that has the power. At the end of the day, it's the consumers, it's your fans, it's the artists. You guys make up that whole ecosystem. Without you guys, like, nothing can work. You know what I mean? So I think just understand that as the main starting point, right?
Man, thanks, man. I appreciate that so much because you've seen so much of my journey. I mean, literally, we met like kind of near the precipice of my journey, and we've been friends ever since. And you've seen kind of how it's gone, and so man, that really means so much because yeah, you're so right. I mean, the only reason that I have the belief in this is because of my community of people like you, man, that really have done it and gone on and did these things that really proved to me like, oh shit, like I can do that too. And it really is from the success of the other people within our network and within our community that then begets the courage within our own hearts, right? To believe that we can do it as well. And that's another reason why, we'll have to probably do another one to talk about that and representation, everything, why it's so important. But truly, man, I just want to say thank you because you really have done that for me and you've been doing that a lot for so many other people. You've made it believable that we can achieve greatness. We can do these things. We can create companies that then go on to help and impact a lot of people. Last question I got to ask you because it really pours into this because like you said, the only reason that I wanted to create Fan is because of this 15, 20-year experience of going through this music industry and being a brown person, not knowing exactly how to navigate it, but seeing like it's just through my experience of realizing, oh my gosh, things need to change. It really is from the learnings of that. If you could go back in time to the 15-year-old Benny, and you could, and what you know now, and 15-year-old Benny is, I don't know how 15-year-old Benny was, but when you're
I was a
15,
weird kid.
you could be, scared, timid. I was. What advice would you give 15-year-old Benny for the future to come?
I would just say keep going. It'll get better. Don't give up. Just keep going.